afternoon. We've made an innovation today, this afternoon, because we've transformed our traditional, our popular siesta into a fiesta, into a party. So I don't know if it's good for our health, but anyway, that's what it is. So we are happy to welcome you again, to welcome to this afternoon, to our afternoon panels. I hope you've had a nice lunch. For me, it has been even better than nice, because I've received a present. I don't know if you had the opportunity to taste it, but the delegation from Ukraine gave me chocolate coming from Ukraine, so it's really very nice. Thank you so much for your chocolate and for your energy. Thank you. So, we would like to thank the representatives of the European Commission, also other European institutions like the Council of European Bioregions and the European Clusters Alliance participating on-site, but also online. We thank partners and delegations traveling from UK, from Sweden, from Ukraine, from Estonia, France, Germany, Finland, Poland, Netherlands, and also from Bulgaria. Thank you so much for joining us and for participating in our meeting and in these cluster dialogues. Thank you also for making possible that this meeting is even more international. Now, we welcome on the stage to Mr. Szekacs, coming from the European Commission. He is the team leader of digital industries at the Directorate General for Internal Market, Industry, Entrepreneurship, and SMEs, the DG Grow. And we are going to start this afternoon with the opening keynote talk, which name is Helping Increase EU's Digital Resilience. Welcome back.
Good afternoon. It's a pleasure to be here and to be able to talk about, give a regional speech about the digitalization of industry, to give a bit of a broader view on how digital technologies contribute to the competitiveness and resilience of European economy. These digital technologies and advanced technologies already take up 1/4 of European industrial production in the EU, and their role is expected to only grow in the next 10 years. According to a World Economy report, 70% of all value created until 2030 will be digitally enabled. However, as highlighted in the recent 22 DESI report, which is the Digital Economy and Society report, it seems that European companies are struggling with the uptake of modern digital technologies. Give you 2 examples. Only 8% of companies use AI technologies, and 14% of companies use big data technologies in Europe. And remember, the objective is to reach 75% in 8 years now. So it seems that we are a bit behind, also compared to other regions. Even more worrying, around half of the SMEs are struggling to even have basic digitalization uptake. Europe is also falling behind to other regions when it comes to so-called transversal technologies. So what are these technologies? These are technologies that can be used across all ecosystems, all sectors in Europe: AI, industrial IoT, big data, 5G, and so on. So when you look at, for example, investments in these technologies, look at the 10 biggest companies that invest in quantum computing, you see that 5 of them are from the US, 4 of them are from China, and none of them are from the EU, if you look at the 10 biggest companies. If you look at 5G, which is, again, key element for future connectivity. Again, what you see is China captures nearly 60% of external funding, the US around 1/3, and Europe only 11%. In AI, again, the same pattern. US captured 40%, Asia, including China, around 1/3, and then EU 12%. So Europe still has its strongholds. We are very strong in industrial IoT, for example, in advanced manufacturing in terms of technology generation. But here also there are some very challenging signs, signals that shows that other regions are catching up. Now, against these longer-term technological trends, we should also, however, not lose sight of what's happening in Europe, right? So what happened due to the COVID pandemic and also now in the recent Russia's aggression of Ukraine. These two challenges, the Russian invasion and the pandemic, caused this disruption of supply chains, inflation, high inflation, and really soaring energy prices. And against this backdrop, it is even now more important than ever to use digital technologies to help European industry become greener, more sustainable, more competitive. So this is recognized by the European Commission. It published its industrial strategy update in 2021, where it called for the so-called twin transition of European industry, the green and digital transition. And it recognized this dual role of digital technologies, not only making and helping industry become more competitive, but also more resilient and more sustainable. So what the Commission did, talking about capacity building here, we have been streamlining and coordinating the different funding opportunities for companies. For example, the Horizon Europe's Innovative Europe pillar supports with 13 billion euros the innovative SMEs. From the morning keynote, we heard that this region, and I'm very happy, I was very happy to hear that you're very successful in using these programs to support your innovation. Still talking about capacity building, it's equally important, I think another panelist also mentioned, to reduce the red tape, the administrative burden. So the European Commission also built together with the member states so-called EU Single Digital Gateway. And I wonder how many of you have heard about the Single Digital Gateway? One person, amazing. Okay, so we still have two persons, amazing. We still have a lot of work to do with creating awareness about these tools. What is it? It's a single gateway that includes all information for companies about all the procedures relevant for companies in each member state. So if you want to open a new company in a new member state, you have the information how to do that. If you want to pay your taxes, if you want to apply for public procurement, you know all the rules. And starting from this year, we don't only want to provide information for companies, but we also want to share information between public authorities about individual specific processes. What does it mean? If you apply for example, a call, and you have to produce a certificate that you paid your taxes, you paid your social security, and so on, until now, you as a company, you are the postman between the two authorities. We want to change it and want to enable the authorities to exchange these documents between each other. So this is about reducing the red tape. And we also continue to provide support through the various established networks. We mentioned already this morning the clusters, the very significant role of clusters. We also mentioned perhaps the digital innovation hubs, but also the Enterprise Europe network that, for example, in this letter, we established so-called sustainability advisors that help SMEs and companies take up sustainable business model, circular economy, and resource efficiency related products. Now, this is about capacity building. It's equally important to create clear rules, and I think that was already covered this afternoon and this morning, the importance of clear rules and a level playing field for everyone. We discussed today the Data Act, Data Governance Act, but I could also mention more horizontal rules that needed to be updated. For example, the Cyber Resilient Act or the revised Product Liability Act, which is about modernizing the liability of product directive to meet the challenges of digital products and AI-driven products. Now, at the same time, the industrial strategy called for the development of so-called transition pathways. These are basically action plans in each ecosystem that are co-created with companies, stakeholders, industry, and other NGOs that identify the challenges in each ecosystem, the barriers in various areas, and then develop really specific action plans to accelerate this digital and green transition. And what we learned, I mean, we already have I think 4 or 5 such pathways already developed together with the stakeholders. And we had a bit of a look of, looking at what are the patterns across these transition pathways. And what we saw in terms of digital technologies is that there's a huge challenge in highlighting the benefits of and creating awareness around the benefits of digital solutions. So what it can, how it can provide benefits to SMEs or public buyers who use these technologies. And I think this was already mentioned in the last panel, that you need some kind of a sophistication of demand, right? You have to understand, you have to have your business and you have to have a mature digital culture in your company to appreciate how modern technologies can help you. So this is why I believe that besides the clear rules, besides capacity building, it's equally important to support the uptake of digital technologies. And how you can do that, there are various approaches, perhaps just to mention 3. You can provide direct financial support for SMEs to try to take up the digital solutions. And a great example for this actually is a national one from Spain, from this country. It's the Digital Toolkit program that announced the digitalization of 1 million SMEs using 3 billion euros of budget. We should, however, not forget also public procurement. It can be a great lever to digitalize the economy. It constitutes to 14% of all GDP. So it's a huge lever if you can use public procurement to gear towards procuring more innovative solutions, that it's basically for free. And this is exactly what the Commission is doing. We have an initiative called Innovation Procurement that helps public buyers, but also big buyers in Europe, and brings them together with suppliers of innovation, researchers, and investors under a common broker platform, for example. Finally, matchmaking is also a powerful tool that can help bring together the supply side with the demand side. And here we also have several successful initiatives, for example, from the European Innovation Council that uses its database of 2,000 companies, highly innovative companies, to bring their solutions toward public buyers and private investors using specific challenges. Or I can also mention the Enterprise Europe Network that also runs several matchmaking exercises. And this is also what my team is going to do this year. We have announced to launch some large-scale matchmaking exercises, and we're looking for different ecosystems where there's a potential to bring together these solution providers with the demand side. And the health ecosystem is one of the ecosystems that we're looking into, so I would be very, very happy to talk to some of you after the panel discussion and discuss what could be the opportunities. So with that, thank you very much. I'm very much looking forward to the panel discussion, and hope you'll enjoy the meeting.
Thank you, Szabolcs. Thank you so much. I hope you have a lot of success. I invite you just to stay for the panel, because we're going to discuss about the same issue. And we invite also Björn Arvidsson, Managing Director of Stans Life Science from Sweden. We also Sohail Nourestani, a health consultant at Eurasanté from France. Sven Parkel, Secretary General of Balt and board member of Connected Health in Estonia. And the chair of this panel is Montserrat, who is the Director of Science Policy and Internationalization at Biocat. So let's go.
No, we're going to survive, but we have to get a little bit crazy to do something like we did today. Just joining, gathering so many people, some parallel agendas, bringing people from abroad, having like 4 or 5 days of packed events, and thanking everybody for being here. So definitely, we're not going to survive unless you get good crazy, like Björn said yesterday, a little bit good crazy. So thank you. Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
So, and thank you, Szabolcs, for your words. I'm going to introduce briefly they were mentioned already, but my colleagues at the panel, because for me it's a pleasure. They are also colleagues and partners at the project, the EU project, our first coordinated EU project, BRIGHT. And you see the logo here. And this is also why we have these badges, like it's a pilot for that. And this is also the project that allows us to invite our Ukrainian partners in this cluster exchange visit that will span like until Friday, if I'm not wrong. So, so thank you also to the Commission for the support on that, and that allows us to do things. And this is why we have these partners here today. Let's see what this project has allowed us to do. And I will start the questions with the bright partners, Sven Parkel from Connected Health, Estonia, Björn Arvidsson from Stone's Life Sciences in Uppsala in Sweden, and Sohail Nourestani from Eurasanté in Lille in France. So under the BRIGHT projects, we have, and they have performed an assessment of the digital maturity of the ecosystem. And that is relevant because that was the start of the project. It was relevant because we saw that probably life sciences was not the most mature ecosystem in digital terms compared to other sectors. And that was the triggering factor for our studies. So which are your main findings? And I'm going to ask that to Sohail, Björn, and Sven when you perform this assessment in your own ecosystems. We start with Sohail, for example.
Okay, perfect. So hello everyone. So thank you, Montse, for the introduction. And so yeah, we worked for the BRIGHT project, which is a European project for sure. And we at Eurasanté, we had to perform an assessment of the digital maturity level of each of the ecosystem that are participating within the project. So we had some interesting findings. The first one is not really new. We all know that digital transformation is key and is completely mandatory for the health sector. It's something not new, but when you compare the health sector to the other industrial sector, like I don't know, automotive or finance, we are lagging behind, and there is lots of opportunities for the health transformation thanks to digital tools and digital technologies. So that's the first finding that we had when we exchange with our ecosystem. Some other findings that are interesting is the level of maturity regarding and depending the sector in the health. When you are a big pharma like Sanofi or Bayer, those companies are more advanced compared to small startups or SMEs. And that's a finding that we all share within the project. The other findings that we had also is regarding the e-health, especially. Those are the companies that want to transform the health sector, create new care pathways, provide new solutions and products to enhance how we perform care, to try to improve the efficiency also. So in our region, I will only talk for France and for Lille, we have lots of startups, more than 700 that are only targeting the e-health market. So not medtech, not biotech or pharma, but only e-health, which is really huge. And in France, we are seeing another trend that we can call also transformative, because we see large corporations trying to attract startups and small SMEs, to attract them and to maybe some of them to acquire in order to transform their own ecosystem. Like, for example, one of the main companies called La Poste I don't know if you know them, but they are the main national delivery of mail, and they invest a lot now in health because they want to transform their core business. So that's another finding, but I will maybe let
thank you. And just to confirm, the findings that you as a work package leader for this assessment is quite similar to what we sent you from Biocat or from other, in terms of digital maturity, of course. But let's hear, Björn, what happened in Uppsala.
Okay, thanks. So first of all, hi everybody, and thanks for inviting me here. So Stuns is an organization working in Uppsala, Sweden, so it's just north of Stockholm. As you could see by the report from Biocat, Sweden is very strong in this area. And I would like to say that Uppsala is particularly strong, actually. We have approximately 18% of Swedish life science in terms of revenue and also job positions, even though we're only 2% of the population. And together with my colleagues, we work with a cluster in this city to make sure that we, for instance, grow in terms of digital. So assessing the system, I would like to say we need to see the whole spectrum of the maturity. So it's good to see those who are barely digital at all, still analog in their way, those who have started their digitalization journey, those who are a bit more digitalized, and then those who are born digital, so to say. And I think it's also you need to differ between those who are offering a digital tool or service or those who are using digital tools or services for their digital maturity. And our task is, of course, to evaluate in which of these transitions we could make the best bang for the buck in terms of where we should make activities and initiate something that could actually change this transition. In general, Sweden is very strong in terms of tech, ICT and tech. And we have a long legacy in life science and biotech, but merging these two sectors is very difficult. So we have the competences in Sweden in terms of in the tech sector, but we don't have them in the life science sector. And in order to be able to be stronger by kind of migrating people from tech to life science, we need to act, really. First, we need to make sure that we have a strong community in tech so that they are joined together. And then we need to make sure that life science is attractive enough, because these are actually competences that is needed everywhere in the world, in every sector. So why should they be interested in life science, and why should they be interested in working in Uppsala? That is the question we need to answer somehow. And I think, and I think it's the same thing for any place, even for Estonia, that's been digitalized for 20 years now, even in the government.
Thank you for moderating, Björn. Now, Sven.
Right, exactly. Hi, Sven Parkel from Connected Health Cluster. So Connected Health is Estonia-wide health cluster, which mainly focuses on digital health companies, but we do have a couple of biotechs as well. So to do that, I very much enjoyed how Björn said some companies are born digital, some are going towards that direction. So I'd say that many of the companies in our cluster are born digital, so they are taking advantage of the digitalization of health data that's been going on in Estonia for a while now, and 99% of medical data and prescription data is digital and can be accessed, or people can access it quite easily, and this mentality is carried over to the companies. When we're talking about more life science biotech companies, then the digitalization comes in a bit more difficult way. It's not that easy, but maybe I would end my answer with the question that if, let's say, if you're developing a medical device that's, let's say, comes from a common biotechnology approaches, and you would add a digital component to that to digitalize your device, would that make things easier for you or harder? So maybe there's also something there.
Yeah, thank you. And I saw also that, I mean, we've been working for a year, that some differences in the mindset, of course, that we get from the different ecosystems. And that's why I asked Szabolcs, you talk about industrial ecosystem transition pathways, we have an Antonio, I guess, in the room also. He knows also about transition pathways. But they're clear for many sectors, but for health, they are not really clear, and besides, they have been like relying on the HERA, on the Health Emergency and Preparedness and Response Agency. So how is it working? What do you see to support these ecosystems in their needs for digital transformation, relying on the transition pathways?
And indeed, for the health sector, we took a very practical approach, pragmatic approach, and we said also for the health sector, but also for other ecosystems, that we already have, this exercise has already been done in your area by HERA, for example, and we will use that action to help and support the digitalization of the healthcare sector and the medtech sector. So there is no new transition pathway foreseen for the health ecosystem, because we didn't want to redo the exercise again with the stakeholders. But we are analyzing, I think that the real value in these transition pathways is not only developing really specific actions and individual to the ecosystem, but real value is also to analyze them and see what are the common patterns, right? And that we're already doing together with the industry to say, okay, what are the common, the horizontal actions that we need that can influence each other. If we go approach and go together in various sectors, we can have probably a bigger bang for the buck than doing individual exercises in the different ecosystems.
Well, thank you. The plan is there. That's good. And I'm going to use what Björn said about attracting people to Uppsala to do life sciences. And let's turn the question and say, what would you say to your policymakers or your governments or your decision makers, how they have to support life sciences industries and these health tech industries as a key factor for reindustrializing your regions, your countries, so supporting these areas? What would you say that, what is the role of these ecosystems actually? Sorry. Now you didn't do that.
Looking around the institutional players that are, also making the strategy, I think what could have been good is make more or make less administration and maybe more focused on actions. That's something that when I talk with the startups, for example, it always a subject, because they need to to evaluate, to experiment their solution, to have evidence, clinical evidence, and that takes lots of time, lots of fundings, really good human resources to do so, and having a layer of administrative tasks could be also an issue for some of them. I think that regarding France, we are trying to, within our own region in Lille, we're trying to use digital technology as an opportunity for the healthcare ecosystem, because we think it would create enormous value, not only for startups, companies, and the economical side of the practice, but also for care establishments, and at the end for the patient. In Lille, the region is quite industrial. We have lots of coal mining and so on. So we have lots of pathologies, chronic pathologies and chronic diseases. And in our incubation process, we've seen lots of improvement in terms of project holders that are coming with really innovative solutions to tackle those issues. And in terms of KPI, for example, in 2019, we had 50% of our incubes that were within the pharma and biotech. And now in 2022, we had more than 50% of the projects that are coming to Eurasanté that are mainly digital focused.
Okay. That's interesting. And I'm going to ask that to Björn, but I know that somehow you have easy path already there, because the smart specialization strategy in Uppsala, at least, Uppsala region, is focused on digital transformation, isn't it? Probably I'm just saying.
Don't ask me to quote the smart specialization strategy. We won't go there.
But this is part of the project. That's why I mentioned it.
It's a good thing. No, but I think, again, the sector we're talking about, the purpose of the sector is to either directly or indirectly improve our health. So in the first group, you have a certain kind of products and services. It could be, in this case, it could be decision support tools, it could be apps, it could be some kind of digital therapeutics, whatever. In the other group, that is indirectly improve our health, it could be those who actually manufacture or develop products that will directly improve our health. It could be to make our production or manufacturing more efficient and so on. And for instance, actually in not the next panel, but the panel after that, one of my colleagues, Alexandra, will talk about how we do that in bioprocessing environment in Uppsala, where we help digitalize it. But I think it also is kind of obvious in the first group, for instance, that if we go to healthcare then, those who actually can improve our health, it's kind of obvious that doctors need decision support tools. You know, the higher resolution we have in data, the more diagnostics we use, whatever it becomes more and more complex for anyone to make any decision. So that's kind of, it sells itself. I think in the second group, it's also kind of obvious that in terms of sustainability, we need to have more efficient processes. We need to make our logistics much better, and so on. So I think that there's a lot we can do, and we won't learn from within our sector. We need to look outside of our sector. If we look at decision support tools, I think we should look at, for instance, the finance sector, because they have been working with decision support for maybe 15 years. And in terms of automation or robotics or whatever, I think I told you before that you can look at, for instance, the forestry. They have been working with robots for a long time. How do they work with regulations? How did they work? So there's so much to be inspired by outside of the original silo we act in.
Yeah, thank you, Björn. And I will ask the same thing to Sven.
Yeah, thank you. Perhaps I bring a little bit of intrigue to this discussion and say that, in my opinion, today, when we look at healthcare, for example, digital companies, maybe punished is a bit too strong word, but they're strongly held back if we look at the conditions where the digital health companies are these days. So the new set of regulations has created quite a bit of uncertainty for notified bodies, for the companies themselves. In addition, when we're talking about the reimbursement models, it's not always clear how those companies can be reimbursed and how can they offer their services to markets. So on one hand, we're expecting those companies to provide all the value, and that's absolutely normal and expected that those companies should help to digitalize healthcare. It's just sort of the framework is not there yet. So in a way, what has started to happen is that many companies sort of are aligned on the starting line, and they're waiting for the start signal. But the start signal is not coming. And that can be a bit tough, so something perhaps to think about.
So this project, again, is about learning from each other. So they're here in a cluster study visit also. We went to Estonia, we went to Uppsala, we will go to Lille in a few weeks, and now they're here in Catalonia. So you saw today the ecosystem. My next question after Szabolcs would go about that. But to Szabolcs, how can, and I don't know if, please tell us about it, the Green Deal industrial plan can help us there in making really these industries that we are talking about the key of the reindustrialization of Europe.
Yes,
sustainable,
I think it has some lessons learned also, or some patterns that can be used also in the health sector. So what the Green Industrial Plan is about making sure that key technologies and the industrial capacity that are critical to creating a net zero industry in Europe, they remain in Europe, right? That's the whole point, that to make sure that we have the capacity to convert our industry into a net zero emission industry in the near future. So for that, our president has announced, for example, the simplification of permits, of creating new new factories to make sure that those factories that are critical, for example, battery there or windmills, there can be established faster, as fast as it's possible according to national legislation. They also introduce new financial instrument support to provide additional support. She also announced the, let's say, reorganization of the repower funds to support this. So what is the lessons learned perhaps for the health industry? On one hand, I think that becoming energy efficient and material efficient, it's relevant for all industries, not only for the renewable sector, also perhaps the health sector, especially if you look at, or the medtech or biotech sector. If you look at the energy prices, now it's a very easy business decision to be more energy efficient as compared to perhaps 5 years ago when it was trendy, but not really, it was not a life and death decision, right? To be very efficient, energy efficient. So there are some really useful use cases also for all sectors. And here is what the Commission is also considering, is looking into how we can help SMEs in different sectors directly, right? So how we can help them become more energy efficient. And I hope that in the next couple of months we'll have some more information to share.
Okay, yeah, we try to be very aware of what the Commission publishes about what's coming next and the tools that are going to support us there. I guess that one thing that the Commission might have is our feedback as ecosystem players. You saw today this room, 600 people, but it's not, I mean, all the ecosystem, of course. We all have our ecosystem mindset. How is it helping us to support the transformation? Are you really having that ecosystem mindset in place to support this transformation, the twin, the digital, the sustainable? Sohail.
I mean, for our side in France, and especially within the Hauts-de-France region, so around Lille, the mindset is really focused on that, trying to set collaborative work, trying to, to work in an ecosystem, because we think that it's better to work together to find the solution instead of working in silos. It's not something easy. Especially when you look at some hospital strategy. For example, in Lille, we have 2 main hospitals that are really competitive against one in each other. So we have Amiens and Lille, and they really work in silos. And our role as a cluster, as an economical development agency, is to give them a broader view of the opportunities that they could have by working with researchers, by working with startups and SMEs, by trying to set up new ways of development for example, I don't know, for a medicine or a drug. And I think we are, one of the players that could help those really diverse actors to trying to work in an ecosystem, and that's what we intend to do in the years that are coming. And in terms of strategy, we are thinking that it's really good to have lots of companies, lots of innovative disruptions and so on, but at the same time we should also be, careful about the way we support some of the startups, and not to have too many projects at the same time within the same country. For example, in France, I already told it, more than 700 companies, and there is startups in Paris working on a B2B rendezvous app. You have the same in Montpellier, you have the same in Marseille, and so on. So the coordination at the national level is also something that we have to think about, because you will have lots of initiatives, but very less turnover in terms of,
Clear. We will give time for the colleagues also to explain some things about their ecosystem mindset and how it helps. Björn and Sven.
Sure. I think that you don't have to be a prophet to predict that the European Union will regulate more And I think life science and biotech and health sector is very used to regulations, but people who comes from other sectors or migrate into life science might not be as familiar with that. So if you're an innovator that comes from the side, so to say, and you come up with a new healthcare or health improvement tool or service, you might run into these kind of regulations, and that could be a threshold. So I think it's, and the same thing when people migrate in between the different sectors, it could be a threshold to get used to these regulations and compliance. Second, I teased it in the first answer that we need to merge the tech and ICT sectors with life science and biotech and healthcare. I think it's super important to be able to migrate people and to be more attractive from the outside. And as an ecosystem player, I think there are three things. You need to have a good strategic foresight, you need to be a thought leader, and you need to build on your relevance. And what I mean about that is that you need to, as Sohail said, you need to see the opportunities somehow and make a good analysis of the opportunities or challenges that you are facing. And then you need to tell your ecosystem, you need to be that thought leader. And the relevance part is, of course, why should they believe you? If you say something, why should they follow you? Especially if you say something that they are not familiar with. So why should they change their strategies just because you are saying something?
I have to say that visiting Uppsala and visiting the other partners, one thing that struck us is that your organization is focused on not on functional areas, but on targets, on challenges. And that's really interesting. So that's the good thing about this kind of projects, that we learn from each other and we can even include that in our strategies. Sven, also very quickly, we have like 4 minutes for your answer and Szabolcs, but sorry about that.
Yes, until very shortly. So, in Estonia, the overall digital view of the company really supports both in the wider sense life science companies, but also in a narrow sense the HealthTech companies, which we have a view and I think it all starts with the public sector view and the overall infrastructure that's been set up with the help of Estonian government. I'm talking about the X-Road technology, which allows safe transfer of different data sets and interaction between different data silos. And this is quite well used by innovators who are understanding what kind of business models could be built up on these kind of systems and technically what kind of health data could work, understanding how to solve or prevent some kind of disease. We have companies who are working on that. We have society which has a digital mindset, so it's not difficult to talk about novel solutions, and also the legal framework is there, and it's updated as needed. So lastly, from the public sector side, Estonian main insurer, health insurance fund, has started to work out reimbursement models with healthcare companies, digital health companies. So that also helps to understand a little bit better what will work in the future and what will not work. So I'd say that the ecosystem is quite well gathered to work towards the digitalization part.
Yeah, clear. Yeah, so just for Szabolcs, so we are in the middle of economic, climate, social crisis, energy crisis of many sorts. The Commission, I mean, it's global, but the Commission has put many policies, instruments, etc. How are you going to incentivize the economic players to accompany us, ecosystem agents, to this twin transformation? Which are the tools that you think can help us?
I think that on one hand, you have to make sure that besides the digital champions, that no one is left behind, right? So that you also have to focus on support on those SMEs, small companies that may not be able to digitize themselves fast enough to keep up with the overall digitalization industry. So I think you have to have a bit of support there. And in terms of intensity, I think that also in terms of green technologies, let's start with digital one. Digital, I think the instances were quite easy. For digital technologies, the business model was there, always. You would get a good investment on your return on your investment for most cases. At least you could decide. For green technologies, until 3-4 years ago, the business case was not always there, right? It was useful, it was fancy, but the hard business case sometimes was missing. It was sometimes 15-20 years. This all changed in recent years. So now I think that there's no need for persuading SMEs that it makes sense to be more raw material efficient, more energy efficient, because it's very important. You need to create awareness about the different funding opportunities. You need to educate, you need to reskill. And here I think the industry and supporting organizations have a huge role to play. So, for example, reskilling, we started the Pact for Skills, digital skills, where industrial players, umbrella organizations really make pledges to reskill their employees, right? So, and also about awareness raising to help people, companies navigate in this regulatory landscape that you mentioned. Here I also see that there's a huge role for national authorities and for the Commission, but also a huge role for supporting organizations, clusters, European Enterprise Network, and so on, to really educate the companies and help them navigate in the system.
Well, that's it. Thank you very much, because we are really run out of time. If you have questions, they'll be here around for a while. Please don't miss the opportunity to talk to them. They came here just to talk to us. So thank you very much, everybody, for this time. And
thank you.
We'll go to the next table.
Thank you so much, Montserrat. Thank you for the panel.
Thank you.
And let's continue with the second panel of this afternoon, building resilience from clusters to Euroclusters. So we are talking about Euroclusters, trans-European strategic initiatives. Clusters and their networks can provide a path towards supply chain stability and resilience to face crisis. For this panel, we have two persons that are connected online in this panel, two speakers. Karen Lindegaard, International Program Manager from Danish Life Science Cluster, and Marek Seor, Team Leader Cluster Policy, DG GROW, from the European Commission. We will have here on the stage Antonio Novo, who is the president of the European Clusters Alliance, and coming from Ukraine, we have Olga Trofinova, Director of Export Internationalization Department from Ukrainian Clusters Alliance. Thank you so much. We'd like to mention especially that Olga is leading a delegation of representatives of MedTech Ukrainian clusters in exchange visit with the Project Bright, and we have a special recognition for this alliance that was just created the day after the Russian invasion, and she told me just now that they have never stopped working since that moment until now. Thank you so much for staying here. The chair of this panel is Javier Selva, who is the CEO of the CataloniaBio and HealthTech. We asked the chairs of the panels of this afternoon to choose a song just to animate us a bit, and just tell us why did you choose that song? Come on.
I have to say the truth is because Montse said so. So I did it because of that.
She's not here to answer.
I have to blame her. He's over there. But no, really, it's because part of the song says, "Let me show you the wall," and today we're going to show a little piece of the wall and try to learn from this piece of the wall. So that's why we chose it.
That's a nice meaning then. Okay. Remember that you have two panelists online, so go on, thank you.
Okay, so thank you very much. Welcome everyone to this roundtable. Do you hear me properly? Yes? Okay. So this roundtable is called From Clusters to Euroclusters. First of all, thank you very much to Biocat, all the science policy and internationalization team, especially from Montse, to being able to destinate part of this afternoon to these EU policy roundtables, which we think is really necessary. From clusters to Euroclusters, really easy. Clusters, those entities gathering all the whole value chain that must show us the path how to build this EU resilience, okay? How to face those crises we've seen before, COVID, supply chain shortage, energy crisis also, and unfortunately, the Ukrainian war. And on the other side, we have Euroclusters, these European initiatives that are cross-sectorial, interdisciplinary, and also pan-European, that are going to help us to implement this EU industrial strategy. So to try to elucidate within this context, how are we going to be able to build this resilience, we have Olga, Antonio, Karen, and of course, and Marek. Thank you very much, four of you, for attending today. And we will try to, the dynamics will be quite quickly. We'll do 1-2 questions, okay, round of questions to each, and then we will open the floor to the audience in case anyone wants to do any question on that. So, similar question. How was the creation of this Ukrainian Cluster Alliance, and what has been the impact in your organization?
Ukrainian Cluster Alliance was created just 1 month after the war. And actually, we have started to work next day. She was absolutely right. But already on 24th of March, we had a common meeting with 16 clusters already. And actually, thank you to European Cluster Alliance, because next day we were accepted to be a member of European Cluster Alliance. And this is exactly about resilience and human-centric of all what we did from the beginning of the war, because definitely what we want to survive. And of course, our business wants to be more resilient. And it is possible only to be connected between companies, between clusters, and right now we are already 50 clusters, and we are still growing, and new clusters are opening, and right now 5 medical clusters from all Ukraine, because they are from Kharkiv, from Dnipro, from Kiev, Rivne, and Lviv, from different activities, but medtech, medical clusters, and this is only part of our alliance. So we do have also other industries, and again, cross-disciplinary and solving the same questions, the same problems which we occurred. It's really give us a possibility to be more resilient to the situation we had and still have.
Great, thank you very much, Olga. 1 month after the war was already done. 50 clusters.
16 clusters.
16 clusters.
Already joined, and we have established.
Incredible example. Thank you very much for that. Talking about which are the main learnings and experiences, also, Antonio, now it's going to be your turn. Which are the main learnings and experiences and outputs to be transposed from the European Cluster Alliance in those crisis times? I mean, which was all the work done with the European Commission in terms of European sovereignty or subsidiarism? I mean, what can you tell us about that?
Okay, it's not very well known the role that clusters played during the COVID crisis and the situation that we face also with the disruptions, industrial disruptions. Perhaps some of you know, but not so much. Cluster demonstrated during the COVID crisis the need for reaching very, very quickly to the industries, to the ecosystem, and not only reaching the capacity to reach for the ecosystem, but to have a quick feedback and map resources and connect those resources that were missing the right linkages. You know, there were, at the beginning of the COVID crisis, that there was a big need, for example, for manufacturing vaccines, okay? And not only clusters, but led by the European Commission, by Marek here, and the ECCP, the European Cluster Collaboration Platform. We were able to collaborate on creating that map, distributing the challenge and the invitation to all the industry. And I mean, we distributed the invitation to more than 80,000 contacts, but we had a very quick answer for near 400 companies, identifying their projects, their needs, the barriers, and their interest in collaborate. And we organized, together with the ECCP during the year 2021, 3 big matchmaking events with I think that good results. I think that more than 60% of the companies that attended those matchmaking events reported to have created some kind of connections. And the reality is that at the beginning of 2021, we didn't have a strong capacity in manufacturing vaccines, and now we are the biggest manufacturer in the world. So I think that we need to recognize the critical importance of the networks on answering some difficulties and crises and connecting the right people in the moment that we need it.
And do you think, Antonio, just continuing with this question, that this way of working is going to continue afterwards in this in the European level? I mean, all those holding hands among industries, building this capacity together. Do you think is going to stay? We're going to learn from those lessons, or maybe we're going to go back to the old way of working, each one separated in silos and not talking to each other in different member states?
I'm convinced, because this is not about only about responsibility, it's about interest. You know, it makes sense. In the current economy, for really competing in a complex environment, companies need to collaborate. And what we are speaking about is the structure that helps effective collaboration between companies, you know. So I'm pretty convinced that we will grow, not only, and we are growing in recognition and in capacities, because it's true that we are quite young as a structure, some clusters here in Catalonia for more than 30 years, but this in terms of economy is not so much, but you have very strong clusters here, and generally speaking, Europe has more than 1,000 registered clusters. That's a lot. You know, more than 150,000 innovative companies collaborating in Europe through clusters. That's a lot. We are growing.
Sure, and yes, as you said, the perfect hallmark for this collaboration within the industries, it can be, or companies or SMEs can be the cluster for sure. We talk about working as a network, first block of questions, then the second block of questions, don't laugh, Olga. The second block of questions is going to be, what is the role of these Euroclusters in Europe's resilience, okay? So, how can, and more specifically in your case, in the Ukrainian case, in Ukraine and in the Ukraine Alliance, and those 5 health clusters that have come here today, okay, how can European SMEs, clusters, or other organizations are able to support your development or to establish partnerships in the future? I mean, what are you looking for, or what can we're expecting, for example, on that side?
Actually, what we expect, of course, we have so many expectations, you know, but the biggest expectation, and we know all Ukrainians right now have. But actually, about Biomed and our cluster environment, what we do, we actually building now ecosystem, and we are trying to open all possible doors for the whole world. And thank you for Marek, for DigiGrow, for Antonia, and for all others who really open us and really give us a hand, give us this light in the end of the tunnel, because we're also a member of TCI network. And again, for this building ecosystem, we, as Antonio said, we should have a lot of partners. EN network, management consultancy support for capacity building, some funding support for our laboratories building, because we still do not have any notification body, any accredited laboratory for medical devices. How we could be integrated, how we could be equal partners, because we would like to be equal partners. And we do understand that clusters, it's not just cluster for clusters, you know, we exist for SMEs, for our business development, for our economy development, to be more integrated in European society, in a world society. This is our choice, because we don't need this Russian world, you know. So this is a lot of work to do, and we understand, and right now, actually, you know, seeing all your results, which we saw in the morning, I'm fully impressed because we do understand how big work we should do, how long way we should go through. But we should start and we should really move forward. And without support, without your support, it wouldn't be possible. It simply wouldn't be possible. That's why, again, thank you for inviting us. Thank you for accepting us and giving us such a chance. But we need maybe even more integrated. Not just experience exchange, not just capacity building, which is really important, but also supporting some funding and in building infrastructure in medical, in this ecosystem. Because without it, it would be really difficult.
Yeah, I keep that sentence: being equal partners. That's what it has to be. So, Antonio, if you want to add up when everything you want, just feel free, okay? But going in your side as the European Cluster Alliance and that hat and that perspective and panorama that you have of the European policy. What European policies do you think that in the near future could help us, clusters or not clusters, okay, on this EU resilience towards this EU reindustrialization? It can be the EU industrial transition pathways, it can be the S3P platforms, it can be the I3. Which schemes do you oversee that will be more helpful in that side?
I would say all of them and even more. Because some years ago we were in our small world, in our ecosystem. But currently it's very, very clear that collaboration is critical for all our economic activity, And so we are extending our activities through the different DGs, I would say, ecosystems, and I really think that it's good to better understand what is doing Europe when selects 14 critical industrial ecosystems and builds the transition pathways. We are contributing to those transition pathways with proposals, but also we want to contribute in the implementation of those action plans, and engage our ecosystem and our industries, the SMEs involved and the large companies involved in them, on the development of those strategic initiatives at European level. So we are growing in capacities, and that is also very much related to the Euroclusters that was the origin of your question. It's clear now that we need regional clusters, but we need networks, because we need to go up in the levels. And we, again? Yeah. You are hearing me. We could speak, or we have, regional networks and national networks, even the European Cluster Alliance. But this, I think, a very good initiative from the Commission to help in the building of those Euroclusters as, I would say, thematic, not sectoral, but thematic Euroclusters, networks. Meaning that when we speak about one Eurocluster in health, it's not only composed by health companies, but all those related that can really cross-fertilize the health ecosystem. And the challenge there, in my opinion, personal opinion, is that we should not think of Eurocluster just as something that grows from one specific call and disappear after 3 years. No, we need to really make those Euroclusters a stable organization, adaptable, evolving, whatever you want, just, but with long-term plans, strategies, and capacity to grow, I would say.
And regarding to this last point, and maybe Marek, you're hearing me right now, and I think we can hear you, correct? Correct, great. So this is a question for Antonio, Marek, so I don't know who wants to answer it first. As you said, we need commitment. We need commitment, or we need that these Euroclusters are able to live long and be able to have those outcomes and outputs. No, when you are nets from networks, I mean interregional networks, what happens? Because it's quite difficult sometimes, because you have to connect local authorities, regional authorities, with the European level, and sometimes, which is really nice and is really necessary, which is these interregional networks, and has all the support from the regions and the European level. When you go down to the local or the regional or the state authorities, sometimes you don't have the commitment for that. So what is your, I mean, do you have any strategy regarding that, like meeting those both ends, the European level and then the commitment from the local or regional levels? Marek, Antonio, in terms of fostering interregional cooperation.
If you allow me, I will just put it in the perspective. I have a very short presentation, and it will answer to all these questions, I think. If the technicians can put my presentation. Yes, can you see it? Yeah. So basically, because we are talking about clusters to Euroclusters, and Antonio explained very well, and I subscribe to all what he said. Just to imagine the whole power of clusters that we have in Europe, but the companies, research organizations, universities, SMEs, big companies, which are in Europe. And the stronger they collaborate, it's obvious the stronger we can have our community and economy working. On cluster collaboration EU, we have right now more than 1,200 cluster organizations registered. We have more cluster organizations in Europe, more clusters as understood as agglomeration of these entities without even the cluster organizations. So if we consider that this is a big power, and all of them you can see on cluster collaboration, and during the COVID we have experienced this. If you can see, digital and agri-food and health are the most common industrial ecosystems where we have our clusters. So over 60 cluster organizations across Europe, with some with more than 400 members even. And this is something that we wanted to engage in implementation of our industrial policy. So this is recommendations which is coming from the expert group. The clusters task for 2021-27 is leading the green transition, accelerating the digital transition, and building resilience. Why? Because we think that actually with all this network, we can create the resilient economy. And that's why we have thought, having lessons learned from the COVID, when we very much engaged with cluster community, to create the networks of clusters in different themes. And that's why we launched these Euroclusters. And if we consider what are the main things for resilience, I mean, network, you collaborate, you build trust. When you learn people, when you know them, you know how they, if you need to diversify, if you need to reshore, you know who you can talk to, with whom you can liaise with. So you need network. Innovate in order to find substitute for your products or processes. You innovate, but as well you adopt things that are already on the market in order to accelerate your resilience. Training, because you need to have skills in your ecosystem, in your companies, and then go out globally outside the EU, having the economy of scale and scope. So economy of scale and scope, using this huge potential of the EU clusters. And I will give you the example where we want to end up with Euroclusters. This is the Silicon Europe. This was created 20 years ago, and this is right now very reliable partner as well for the European Commission in terms of chips. When we had the problems with chips, we very much referred to them. We talked to them. They gave us feedback. So we see this as a network of very strong cluster organizations across Europe, and we do everything which we can with our budget in order to incentivize this collaboration. For example, Situlab in Lund in Sweden in March, where we try to intensify new projects in collaboration, or matchmaking event. And I would like to mention the matchmaking event in Košice, when we will organize the integration of EU with Ukrainian companies. And then we have clusters mid regions, and I want to refer to you in multilateral level, because if we are talking about the local territorial development, it can enhance its potential when it's linked to others in the EU. So basically what Euroclusters is in very simple words, implementation of European integration. Thank you for this, and I'm happy to further discuss with you.
This reindustrialization and this resilience that is needed in the Europe. Karen, because we are almost running out of time, Antonio, maybe we'll leave the answer for afterwards. Karen, are you able to hear me right now? Yes. Do you want to answer the question I did you the first time? Yes?
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, properly.
Great. Okay, so I was supposed to say a few words about the fusion of 5 clusters in Denmark. I can just say that based on a thorough analysis, it was decided that better services could be provided for SMEs if the clusters existing in Denmark within the life science and health tech area would merge into one cluster. So a super cluster was created based on 5 clusters. Of these, 2 were well-known gold label clusters. They have been gold labeled 3 times in a row. So it was decided to merge these clusters to get a countrywide organization. And when I say countrywide, it's more or less the same as you have in Catalonia, because we have like 5.9 million people in Denmark. So it's a relatively small unit. And the idea is also that it should be like one organization going all across the value chain of healthcare or life science. So all the way from assisted living, digital health to pharma and biotech, medtech, everything included in one cluster. And of course, one of the reasons for that is that what we see is that it doesn't make sense anymore due to digitalization. It doesn't make sense anymore to separate these areas. They're more or less converging now. Some of the challenges we have had is actually very well-known challenges from anybody who are studying organizational development. We have had cultural differences in the 5 clusters, and merging 5 organizations all at once while you are going with a huge portfolio of projects in implementation and so on, it's not an easy task. There's also something about the values in each of the organizations that was destroyed, and then we had to build new values in the new organization. And then, of course, we have also seen everything, including poor communication and integration in many different ways. So just to say, it's the classical challenges that we have seen, and we are now a little less than 2 years ongoing with the new cluster. So things are starting to normalize again.
Karen, just going through that again, I mean, it's well known your digital transformation efforts within the Danish cluster. I don't know if you can summarize in 30 seconds more or less what you do in that case. As you said, we cannot separate digital transformation from health because we see this is a common challenge. So what do you do as we also face it daily basis in our clusters on the digital transformation side? What do you do over there?
A lot of different things. We have a lot of activities. What we can see, I mean, if you look into the industry in the digital health area, it's basically relatively young companies with a high level of reinvestment in innovation. And if you look into pharma and biotech, you have the really, really big companies and a lot of spin-outs and so on around these companies. So it's quite different ecosystems. But what becomes increasingly clear is that the pharma and biotech areas are relatively wealthy and can run their own activities actually without much help of a cluster. But what they are really looking into is to co-develop the digital infrastructure, the data infrastructure, because a lot of the future solutions are from their side are based on personalized medicine and measurement of outcome to a much higher extent than what we have seen so far.
Thank you very much, Karen. As we are running out of time, I don't know if we have time to open the audience one question. If someone wants to ask something to the panelists, if that's not the case, I have one question to Marek. Marek, what would you like to see these Euroclusters at the end of the projects? What would you expect, or what would be your wish list in terms of outcomes and outputs in these Euroclusters initiatives?
Yeah. Okay, so initially we wanted to have the Euroclusters to implement the industrial strategies, but then resilience as a biggest challenge appeared, and actually we want Euroclusters to contribute to building resilience of the EU economy. What we would like to see is the launching the process, as Antonio said, of very stable long-term collaboration between cluster organizations and everyone who can help in realizing the resilience building. Even if they are outside the cluster organizations, but they can still contribute, Euroclusters should welcome them, because it's about the objective. Objective is resilience building. And here we will have two Euroclusters in health, one on biomedicine, another on digitalization in health. And we think this will contribute, but as well start building the network of the cluster organization and the members who can work together and create, as I show something like Silicon Europe for health, Silicon Europe for biomedicine, Silicon Europe for the digitization of health, because we think the more interaction between different competences at the EU, the better it is for the EU, and the more we can go to compete globally. So this is where we would like to see Euroclusters. And of course, in Euroclusters, we have support for SMEs. So it's not just that Euroclusters support SMEs in terms of workshops, but they support as well financially, at least for 50,000-60,000, so that we make it happen on the ground. It's not just something that is about supporting business in general terms, but about going in depth on the ground to help SMEs, and on this basis, showing evidence things can be done.
Thank you very much, Marek, Karen, Antonio, and Olga, for sharing your time and your knowledge today. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Thank you very much. Yes, okay. Yes, because we are going to the last roundtable of the day, the last panel, talking about sustainability. Biomanufacturing capacities are directly related to Europe's resilience. So our last panelists of this afternoon, of this all day, are Tero P. Spanen, Senior Executive at Health Turku from Turku Science Park in Finland. Also Alexandra Patriksson, hello, Science Relation Manager at Testa Center from Sweden. And Ángeles Barrio, who cannot stay here because he had a last-minute affair, a last-minute issue, and instead of her is going to talk Montserrat Daban, who is just taking the main ideas of Montserrat has taken the main ideas of, it's fabulous, of EIT and is going to share with us the ideas that Ángeles Barrio was going to explain to us today. And the chair and panelist of our last roundtable is Anaïs Lecorbec, Director Council of European Bioregions. So Anaïs Lecorbec, you have to explain us why you chose Unstoppable. You are unstoppable, okay. Maybe? We are all unstoppable.
I did not choose. She did.
Montse, you are choosing all the songs.
She's
really?
She's a good DJ.
Next year, Bad Bunny.
Yeah.
Maybe the DJ.
So, but yeah, she chose it because I just got a surgery, finalizing a health process. So I guess I was not sure if I would make it, but I'm happy I'm here.
But not even that stops her, so she's here.
So we are more grateful to stay you here with us and go ahead with the
Thank you.
Thank you.
So thank you for those that are still here. I know the day has been long, intense, many things have been said. So we're going to make this the most fun panel of all day. We had the agreement, so you are all awake, you still have just half an hour left. We're going to talk about something that is really thrilling. Yes, it's true. It's biomanufacturing and how this can make Europe sustainable. I know it seems a bit dry, but it's not. So let's talk about biomanufacturing, and why I'm here today is most likely because I manage the association the Council of European Bioregions. And we've started a couple of years ago with EIT Health, a landscape on biomanufacturing in Europe, obviously provoked the worries with the COVID crisis and all that came after. And so I have very interesting questions for our panelists, because we think biomanufacturing is very important and it will help European sustainability and resilience. So maybe I can start with Tero, one of our great members and from Turku Life Science. Tero, how do you think, how are those biomanufacturing capabilities directly related to how Europe can become more resilient?
Yes, let's say, if we look back 30 years, all of world's active pharmaceutical ingredient manufacturing was 90% manufactured by USA, Europe, and Japan. Now the vast majority of APIs is produced in China and in India. Luckily, the situation in Europe is a little bit more, it's not so complex than in the US. So luckily, we still have got some manufacturing in Europe, but it's important for the European Union to secure the 840,000 jobs that are involved in pharmaceutical development, or the 730,000 jobs that are that we have in medtech manufacturing and development. So that is why the topic is very important.
Okay, thank you very much. And to Alexandra, maybe you can also explain, because both Testa Center actually was one of the very good cases we found in the Scandinavian region in the landscape, because of this combination of different actors around the table to push for biomanufacturing. So how are Testa and Citiva, the company, helping fill biomanufacturing gaps?
So yes, first, thanks for inviting us to come here. And I would like to continue on what you were actually saying about the lack of manufacturing in Scandinavia. I think that's one of the reasons why Testa Center was set up in the first place. And the Testa Center is an innovation hub, and we also call us it's a test bed for both biological and technical and digital innovations within the bioproduction and biomanufacturing area. So we are a non-profit company set up through a public-private partnership between the Swedish government and Citiva, and we are located in Uppsala in Sweden. And what we do is actually that we offer academic researchers and companies access to lab facilities, instrumentation, and expertise that are of industry standard. And we do that because our aim is to bridge the gap between the early phase, small-scale proof of concept research and industrialization.
Okay.
And we believe that, or we know that by coming to us, we are a non-GMP facility, but by running your projects in our facilities, you learn how to tweak them for the next phases. You learn where your weaknesses in your products and in your processes are, and you will be in a much better position when you go to the next phase. For instance, if you're going into full GMP production for a clinical trial or for full manufacturing, you learn by being in our facilities how to set up the next phase in your projects. And one thing that is important to mention is that we are not a contractor. We don't do the job for the clients. They have to come to us, and they have to make their hands dirty, go into the job, and do the experiments themselves. And there is a strong reason behind that, because if Sweden would like to continue and aims to continue and to be a strong player within bioproduction, we need to build also the workforce that can work within this industry area. So we strongly believe it's a good way of doing it, to let the academic researchers and the small startups and the companies come to us and really do the work themselves. Of course, they get all the support they need when setting up the projects and running the projects, but they have to do a lot of it themselves as well. And that's actually one of the feedbacks that we get when we talk to the projects that have been in Testa Center running their experiments is, of course, they are happy for the data and the results they produce. But even if they fail, one of the things that they really appreciate is the experience of being there, being through the process, and they tell us that they have learned a lot. They say they grow their teams, and they build the knowledge and experience that they didn't have when they come, and they strengthen the competitive edge of the team and the company while being in Testa Center.
Okay, so it's very nice because there's this part of skills that we always talk about, and that's been one of the things that we've seen in many of the different projects we're in, that there's an issue, but it's good that you actually really push up to skill more people. Montse, because you're unstoppable.
No way.
Yeah. And today you're doing EIT Health too, a little bit, because unfortunately Ángeles Barrios could not make it today. So I will ask you for her, because we've been discussing with EIT, what kind of measure have they put in place to actually address?
So so I apologize, because obviously I'm not Ángeles Barrios. I hope we all hope that she recovers quickly of what prevented her to come here today. And yeah, I'm going to try to answer what they sent to me in terms of what is EIT Health doing, but I also want to say that as partner of Biomanufacturing for Recovery and Resilience, I also want to say thank you to the partners of Biomanufacturing, to you, several partners. Alberto is also here. We have people from France, from Germany, from Netherlands, and of course from Finland, and all the partners are here. And that is really interesting, because when we visited for another project Uppsala and we met the Testa Center people, we definitely thought that it was a good way to connect this project to what they do in Sweden with this test bed for biomanufacturing, because really this is one of the key factors also for EIT Health. And let's say that what I can say about them is that they converted this usual planning of calls that they used to do to the new 4 flagships. The new 4 flagship models in specific areas, in strategic areas. Some are devoted to deliver new models to deliver healthcare. Some of them are, those flagships, one is new models to deliver healthcare. Another one is facilitating the uptake to medical digital devices. The other is harnessing the full potential of data for healthcare. And another one, the 4th one, that is different in timeline and in type of calls, is what we call the APSEI, the IPCEI, which is quite difficult. This is this huge projects of common interest that 16 countries have committed to push together, and they intend to work on more innovative, more, greener technologies, but at the same time work together with HERA for the antimicrobial resistance. So these are the two main pillars of this IPSA that is definitely going to change the landscape of biomanufacturing if they deliver what is intended to do. They will also try to work, EIT Health is trying to work with other EITs like manufacturing and food, and you know about that because this was on the baseline of what we were working for the landscape for EIT Health France. Eventually to create these cross kicks, to launch new calls, in order to connect, and Björn said that in a couple of tables before, connecting different sectors, because in the interface of different sectors is where real innovation occurs, and that's why cross kicks are going to be important. This is something that they want to do, and also, of course, connecting to projects with CBER, like the one you are starting also with Genopol, etc. This kind of things is what EIT Health is trying to deliver. Absolutely finding synergies with projects with like Bioman, and I'm sure that if Angeles was here, she would love also to know more about Testa Center, because this is definitely a model to use, a good practice to put also on our regarding practice for that.
Okay. I just want to, before I go second round, I will take my time, that they give me a few minutes to bore you a bit more. But I just want to give the image. I think in the biomanufacturing sector, what we've seen in the landscape, and I must say 3 years ago, I had really not much idea of what biomanufacturing was, so I did an extensive master. They didn't give me the title yet, but I learned a lot. And what I've seen in terms of the good practices, or what could we do to develop further, I think if people in this room would represent the academy, the big pharmas, the SMEs, the developers, the future students, and so on, it's really to see how we can connect better, but not just only in one region. If not also at European level, what we've seen is that obviously not everybody is at the same pace. Not everybody has the same interest, and I think that's where bigger regions, for example, here, Catalonia for sure, in France, there are several regions are also leading the way in the Nordic regions, and I think it's important to connect and not just grow on your own, because, biomanufacturing is a big industry, and you need big money for that. So one of the few things, and Montserrat already mentioned, we are in several projects that connect those ecosystems, and one will start very soon with EIT, with Genopol in France, but there's also this Bioman for R2 project, and I think this is where we need to work, like to really collaborate. Obviously there's this private part to it and to push, but public investments are needed to continue and to connect. So I will pass now to the second round, and I will ask about skills a little bit. I think, Alexandra, you already touched upon it, but I think it's one key aspect that we've seen. What would you say? What is needed? Where do we need to push more in terms of skills in the biomanufacturing sector?
Well, I think going into the industry, what industry needs is really people that understand the industry, that know how to run the equipment, to run the instruments, to do the things in the manufacturing environment in industry, and it's completely different from doing it in a small research lab. And at least from Sweden, we see that there is a lack of this kind of training and education. And this is one of the things that we try to do something about with Testa as well. We have a close collaboration with Uppsala University, and they give a lot of trainings and courses in our facility for their academic students. So we try to do something with that as well, but there is a lack. And then there are other skills that is needed in the industry that you seldom meet in academia or in a startup world. You will be approached by it, but you need to understand the GMP standards. What does it mean? Quality assurance, quality control, the regulatory requirements. You will meet them sooner or later, at least if you're in the biopharmaceutical area. And everything about IP and what to protect and how to protect it, and can you protect it, and so. And understanding what can actually be manufactured, what can you transfer from research into manufacturing. So these are the kind of skills, and then all the kind of soft skills like project management and leadership, of course, that you.
Okay. And maybe I can ask Tero, because you're the coordinator of the Bioman for our two projects. So how would you say it relates to all we're talking about? And can you just give a little bit of information on the project? I know some of the partners are here. I've seen you. but maybe for those that are not and could be interested, what does this project bring to the table? Because we had a Eurocluster panel just before us. And I think it's a nice way to explain in a concrete case.
Thank you. First of all, I must say that I couldn't agree more with you with the skill set needs that is needed. But regarding our biomanufacturing project, it's a pan-European project where we got CBAR is one of our partners. It's Biocat is partner from Spain. We got medicine. We got from Paris region. We got the BioRegion Stern, and we got the Netherlands as our partner, and we got also a Polish partner. So many regions from Europe trying to increase collaboration, but what is more important, we do have some cascade funding to promote the businesses. So actually we can fund with 60,000 euros some of the SMEs that are trying to develop technologies, production methods, or even introduce products. We know that 60,000 euros in this sector is not a big amount of money, but 60,000 euros could make a difference when you need to provide a proof of concept principle. Is it working or not? And that could trigger further investments from the private sector or from the, let's say, even from public sector. And what we have seen, I've been talking to Invest Europe, which is the former European Venture Capital Association. And from their members, I've seen statistics from their members. And 10 years ago, life sciences sector, mainly pharmaceutical, drug development, and medtech sector, 35% of all venture capital money went to this sector. The latest statistics says that in 2021, only 19% went to this sector. And if we remember that 95% of all medtech companies in Europe are SMEs, and young ones, of course, they need this extra money. So to trigger out and boost again these investments, our project actually could make a difference for quite many companies.
I'm sure it will, with all the great people around. And Montse, because you're the EIT representative for today, do you mind telling us what we did this landscape? Like I said, we started 2021 already. It seems like it's been a whirl. What are the main lessons learned that they mentioned to you?
Well, first, again, I'd like to say, if Angeles is seeing this, so hi, and again, please feel better. So I apologize if I'm not transmitting all the messages in the way they should be transmitted, but I would also say that as participant of the landscape, somehow what we saw is the huge fragmentation across Europe. That's one of the learnings we got. And that's why this kind of Euroclusters projects are so important, and connecting ecosystems like the Polish ecosystem you mentioned, the French, the German, and the Spanish, and of course having the CBAR there, it means 45 members, bioregions across Europe that are going also to provide their perspective and support the launching of the calls, which will happen in a couple months now. I don't know when, but it's something that will be really trying to address this fragmentation. That's one thing. The differences among countries, the difference in, because we addressed several items, like for example, talent, infrastructures, skills, of course, not only which talent was emerging from high schools, from universities, different levels of workers, the purple color, what comes from other areas, that's one thing. And the other is which skills are going to be needed in the future to fulfill the needs that will appear probably. And you said we started in 2021, that means we were in the lockdown when we started that, and the world has changed a lot, and the advanced therapies have a big deal to say here also. So that's why what we saw then, some things remain, but some things have to be reconsidered, and I know that there's a second wave of that. You're going to probably say that. So one thing that was learned there is the need to develop policies, policies that will support the modernization, to modernize in general the infrastructures, the facilities, in order to improve the production processes. That's one thing. The other is reducing the dependencies to imports. That goes with this tech sovereignty and this production sovereignty of Europe. We know about that, and it's important also to recall it, because it goes linked to reindustrialization, to resilience. And the other is facilitate the integration of the huge potential of innovation that SMEs have into the whole picture, because we need specific tools. Probably 60K is not a lot, but that can definitely help, like you said. It means more than nothing, that is something. So, and then also boost the innovation on advanced therapies, and that's connecting to the tables in the morning as well. That's from our perspective. And rely also on organizations like the cluster organizations like Biocat, like Stone Life Science, like Turku, and all the clusters that are working together today are really instrumental to support this, to reduce this fragmentation across Europe. That's what I got from them.
Okay. No, it's good to know, because this landscape, basically, we started, and I think to come back to your last comment about the clusters, this is one of the reasons we started to really work closely with the IT Health as an association of clusters across Europe, to really get the feel on the ground what was going on. And this is how we found out many good initiatives from many different places that we would not have found otherwise, because you're connected to the clusters. For me, and I always say that clusters are really good connectors with all the different actors of the ecosystem. So today, with all the panels that you did, obviously you show also that Biocat is very connected to its ecosystem, and how this enables understanding where are the needs, what are the things that work, what are the things that do not work. And I think you mentioned, so we talked about skills a little bit, and this is one of the key aspects, obviously need for more skilled people, maybe try to make our sector more attractive, because maybe engineers are not necessarily going to biomanufacturing as directly, they might go to finance before going to biomanufacturing. And this is something that has to be discussed to make the sector more attractive. You mentioned innovation, the SMEs, how we support them. Again, 60K for biomanufacturing is not much. It would be great for me, but for a company working there, maybe not, but it's a step, it's a push. But the last point I think we did not address, and maybe we have a few minutes left, would be about the bigger picture in terms of funding, because there's this international project of common European interest, the IPK, that Montse mentioned before. It's a lot of money from countries, but that goes into very bigger projects for pharma. But in terms of private investment, and I look at Tero because I know he's really into more the private funding, what do we need? Because it seems like in Europe we're a little risk averse in terms of investing, and this is an issue because we're losing the sovereignty in terms of biomanufacturing.
Yeah, I'm strongly of the opinion that Europe needs to address some incentives for more, let's say, early stage risk funding, because let's say if we look at the broad picture of risk funding, that has been shifting from the early stages to later stages during the last 15 years. So if we want to compete with USA and Asia especially, we need to nurture the young ones. So the SMEs and growing SMEs, they need more innovation, more startups. So a good way for that would be to give some incentives and maybe not even to startups, but maybe to somehow to boost the venture capitalist industry. Because venture capitalists, they can tolerate the, let's say, they can tolerate better, let's say, market risks than technical risks.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you. Do you want to add on that?
I just want to say that we also experienced that there is a true lack of funding in what we call the first value of death, when you go from the basic research to the more proven research not in the lab research environment, but because and in life science it's quite a long time you stay there, and it costs a lot of funding, and we see it in most of the Nordic countries at least, that it's hard to get that phase funded.
Mm-hmm. That hard, yeah. And here I remember in the landscape, one of the key aspects was actually, I would say, the second or third valley of death, because there are quite a few. When you actually need big investments to make those big manufacturing plants, then nobody wants to support, or it's very, very difficult to do so. So yeah, there are some gaps, but it seems there is the money. The issue is that to really push for them to invest in the sector. Montse, you want to add?
Well, yeah, I just was looking at the notes. EIT Health also thinks that it's important to deploy financial instruments, but for those late-stage companies that probably are not in the R&I, but probably in some production phases, because this is definitely something that and Alexandra mentioned that would fill a gap that is already there. So, of course, they are thinking on these possibilities, and this is something that they really want to add. There are not instruments for that stage.
No.
There are not instruments, and then Dero said that Europe needs really to provide those financial incentives for companies to fill those needs.
Definitely. And also invest more in women-led companies, but that's just because I cannot go without saying. So since we have just 3 minutes left, maybe I will just ask you your last thoughts about how we can make this sector really helpful in this European sustainable transformation. So what would you say to those investors if they see us somewhere? Why should we invest in biomanufacturing, and how we can push the European, let's say, going out of this kind of eternal crisis of the last few years? So any of you wants to start?
You are all looking at me. So I would say that let's say the industry offers a big variety of different opportunities, and there are scalable. These are scalable businesses. There are smaller ones. Well, in general, the sector, once it's up and running, it's highly profitable. So let's say in venture capitalists, I would encourage them to keep in touch with let's say clusters, because through clusters you can get to know more in let's say in a certain time you can get to know more companies than if you would meet them one-to-one. So you could select the ones that you really would like to focus on, and then spend your time more wisely.
Thank you. Alexandra.
You were asking why they should invest in the biomanufacturing. Yeah. I think we all see where the pharmaceutical industry is going, from small molecules to more and more biomolecules, and then it's completely different process. It's completely different way of producing pharmaceuticals, and it needs funding and it needs investments from everywhere.
Good. Montse?
Well, I'd say that you see differences in the level of financing in different countries, and for example, what we saw that, of course, after the pandemics, everybody had to run to have their production plans. Otherwise, you have those gaps, actually, again, mentioning the gaps. So there's definitely this area that it was not as sexy, probably, as the digital health at the moment, but it was there. And when the pandemics came, we needed to produce. And definitely, we needed to have invested in there to have everything ready. And this preparedness for anything that might come involves definitely investing here. But then again, there's a new opportunity with the advanced therapies. If we really believe in that, and also in the antimicrobial resistance solutions, we definitely also need to invest on the biomanufacturing as one of the, someone says, the top opportunities for Europe to get back the competitiveness faced to other global regions. So I think definitely biomanufacturing is needs for this focus and this prioritization.
Yes, and I think it's a great showcase of what Europe industry actually can do in all its levels, in all this cooperation, because we really have excellent innovators in that field. I think that's it for now. It was the funniest panel. Yes, you vote for that. Thank you so much for listening, and thank you for the great speakers.
Thank you very much. Very energetic last panel of the journey, so thank you so much. We are reaching the end of this event with the last keynote, specifically chosen to give us some final thoughts for the future. So we have Laura Roman, who is joining us online, and she's going to talk about the industry of the future. She is a policy officer, Industry 5.0 from the European Commission, and she's going to connect online. So good afternoon, Laura Roman.
No, indeed. I just wanted to also mention that I believe after a long day of conference and very interesting panels, and also just hearing the previous panel, there's so much food for thought for you all that I don't want to keep you for too long. I just want to invite you all for a short reflection, knowing of all these different changes that are ongoing and all the pressures that the industry faces. Okay, so looking into the future, how do we act upon all of this? What is in our realm to take as action? Because imagining the future, I think it means looking at all the different aspects that we are surrounded by. So industry, technological change. How does this fit with also the natural world and our humanness? How can we take this into account when we actually look into the future and look at the future of industry as well? So these are questions that we are looking at in my unit, let's say, in DG Research and Innovation, and we are launching this challenge to all of you and everybody to join in and see, how can we get inspired also by nature, and how can we create this symbiosis between our industrial world, the human world, of course, the people. How can we use people more as assets rather than costs, and how can we use nature as assets rather than only as externalities? How can we design technologies in the future of industry so that they serve people, planet, and prosperity, of course, at the same time? And what is the role of industry in this? What's the role of the public sector? All the different societal and innovation ecosystem actors. How can we all act towards this? This is basically our, let's say, research question at the moment, and we are taking all of this, of course, as a challenge, as I said. So we are, of course, building on some specific, different research. There's already a lot that we've built upon. So because we know that technology is not neither good nor bad, it's not neutral, and it's a mirror of our society and our human mindsets. So we are taking this into account in how we are thinking of the future and the future of industry. We know there are all these different discussions of the industrial revolutions. Some call it there are only four, the fourth industrial revolutions. Others mentioned might be 5 stages of industrial revolutions. All these numbers, in the end, what do they mean? It means that we have to take all of these changes into account, and we can use the opportunity that are brought now by the European Green Deal and the upcoming Green Deal Industrial Plan, and basically design the next stages for the role of industry in the face of all these technological, but also societal and ecological challenges. And this is where we turn to Industry 5.0, and I believe just the previous 5 minutes of the recent panel discussion already are incorporated in how we believe the future of industry could be shaped. Because we want to recognize with Industry 5.0 the power of industry to achieve these societal goals beyond jobs and growth, to become a resilient provider of prosperity, to make production respect the boundaries of our planet and place the well-being of the industry worker at the center of production. And of course, to promote talent, to become human-centric by using the skills and the assets of the workers and of the entrepreneurship of the people, and empower them, and using technologies as a way to also empower workers. We think that resilience is another pillar of the future of industry, because we need, as we've seen, we've also just heard, we need to make the value chains and the supply chains more resilient, and the industry in general more resilient and flexible and adaptable. So we are launching different challenges to see how to tackle this. And of course, industry needs to become more sustainable and lead to action on sustainability, respecting the planetary boundaries. So again, all these enabling technologies that we have, the physical world and virtual, and merging them, the bio-inspired technologies, all of them could be used to tackle these higher level challenges, bearing in mind all the three pillars, the prosperity pillar and economic sustainability, ecology, and the societal pillar as well. Just hearing the need for skills in the biomanufacturing sector, this already speaks to the need for industry as well as society to adapt to these new coming industries and facets of industry. And again, why is it needed? But you've already mentioned it earlier. I don't even need to spell this out again, but we, of course, need to make industry a place where the safety and well-being, of course, are taken into account, which they are, of course, by now. But how can we create this industry role in a way that the constant technological change keeps all these aspects into account? The empowerment of the workers, reducing the costs in terms of resource efficiency, using all the new training tools to evolve the skills of the workforce. Everything requires a more systemic approach. And having Industry 5.0 as an approach that can provide solutions. There have been already different research and innovation projects that are tackling these kinds of new approaches. I'm here on the website, on the slide, there are different examples. And there are opportunities, of course, to develop more these kinds of concepts in some of the calls that are now ongoing in the Horizon Europe work program. I'm just listing some of the upcoming calls where I hope you can also get involved. And just generally, I would love to meet you all also later on in different events and in the next steps, like the RNI Days, or there will be the 2023 EU Industry Days in Barcelona, if I am not mistaken. So perhaps there will be also another opportunity to get involved. So that's it from me. I do hope you will be getting active also on these kinds of topics. And I believe this is already happening based on even just the 5 minutes of discussions I've heard earlier. So good luck on all of this. And thank you.
A great session, as you said. We are reaching already the end of this event. We have shared now 9 hours together, so this is not short time. And we have been with 41 panelists and chairs, and we have had really a great time together. So thank you for following us until the end, also to all the people that are connected online. So now I invite you to follow the activities that are also organized by Biocat for this first Barcelona Health Innovation Week, so we have lots of activities, and I hope you can reach them and you can take your time to spend with these activities. And now I would like to invite to come to the stage to Robert Fabregat, the CEO of Biocat, just to give us the very last remarks of today's great event. Thank you, Robert Fabregat.
Thank you, Aurora. Thank you, all of you that are attending the meeting here presentially, but also those that are following through streaming. As seen in these afternoon panels, both Biocat and all of you, our partners, have the vocation to align ourselves with the European policies and actions answering to global challenges. Our international activities allow us to be connected and to answer as well to the main challenge that we have in our ecosystems, with instruments, funding, but also with support, the support needed for the transformation. So the bioregion of Catalonia is competitive, as you saw during this morning, but also this afternoon, in many of these aspects, of those aspects that have been discussed today. For example, the resilience to the biomanufacturing, as we also referred this morning in terms of the opportunities with the fast tracks for the adoption of the innovation, but also the development of the advanced therapies, etc. We are aware of the digital, sustainable, and equitable transformations that the sector needs. Biocat is implementing programs, funding, instruments to work with ecosystems this path. We always say, and Montserrat remember to us the sentence that the status quo is not an option anymore, so we need to transform, we need to go far away. There are many opportunities. Many opportunities have been generated, and more will appear with all of you, with all our European partners and all the European institutions for the year that begins. We are sure that they will be reflected in the next year's report. You saw this morning, the 2022 report, but for sure we will see better and further achievements for the coming years. We are at the end of this session, this long session, but very, very inspired. We'd like to thank all entities that have been collaborating, that have been participating today, all partners that made this event possible, and from our side, from the side of Biocat, from the side of the bioregion of Catalonia, I encourage all of our agents, all of our stakeholders here in our ecosystem to follow the ideas that the local international speakers today inspired us, and to continue making the bioregion one of the most powerful hubs in Europe. So thank you so much for being here today. You are totally welcome to come again whenever you want here in Barcelona, and for sure we will further explore collaborations, potentialities, and we will work together in the future months and years, because we have a very interesting challenge to achieve. So thank you so much, and we will close the session today with this last talk. Thank you so much.